Picture this. You slide into a shiny red vinyl booth at a bustling American diner in 1962. The jukebox is playing. A waitress in a pressed uniform pours your steaming cup of coffee, and the breakfast menu in your hands is full of choices that today simply do not exist. From hearty steak canned eggs platters to delicate baked breakfast puddings, from cereal brands that were once morning staples to griddled specialties that vanished with time, America's breakfast table has gone through enormous change. Today, we are traveling back in time to rediscover the classic American breakfasts that vanished from menus. These are the forgotten plates that once fueled workers, families, and school kids, but have since disappeared into history. Introduction breakfast has always been more than just a meal in the United States. It has been a ritual, a comfort, and in many ways a reflection of American culture itself. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, breakfast was often heavy farmers, and industrial workers needed energy for long days. By the mid-20th century, diners and chain restaurants offered a dizzying array of breakfasts that balanced indulgence with convenience. And by the 1980s and 1990s, marketing campaigns reshaped breakfast into something quick, packaged, and on the go. But with each new trend came casualties. Certain dishes faded away because they were too time-consuming, too indulgent, or simply out of fashion. Today, many younger Americans have never even heard of them. Let us take a nostalgic journey through the forgotten breakfasts that once defined mornings across the nation. Forgotten breakfasts that vanished. 1. Creamed chipped beef on toast, aka ASOS, once a staple of American diners and military mess halls. Creamed chipped beef on toast was salty, hearty, and unmistakably filling. Thin slices of dried beef were simmered in a white cream sauce, then ladled over toast. It earned the nickname SOS during World War II's. Soldiers called it stuff on a shingle, though the stuff was usually a less polite word. After the war, it became common in diners and cafeterias, especially in the 1950s and 1960s. Why it vanished? By the late 20th century, people viewed it as old-fashioned, overly salty, and not exactly healthy. But for veterans and older Americans, the taste was pure nostalgia. 2. Cornmeal mush before hash browns and pancakes dominated the American breakfast table. Cornmeal mush was a hearty, simple dish, especially popular in the South and Midwest. Made by boiling cornmeal with water or milk until thick, it could be eaten warm like porridge or cool and sliced and fried in a skillet the next day. Its roots go back to Native American cooking, and it was once considered an everyday breakfast for farming families. Why it vanished? Instant cereals and packaged breakfasts replaced it. Today you might see it called fried polenta, but the traditional cornmeal mush breakfast is largely forgotten. 3. Scrapple, a cousin to sausage. Scrapple was especially popular in Pennsylvania and along the East Coast. It was made from pork scraps mixed with cornmeal and spices, formed into a loaf, sliced, and fried. In the 1800s and early 1900s, scrapple was beloved for being economical and filling. Diners in the 1950s often served it alongside eggs and toast. Why it vanished? Its ingredients, scraps of pork, made some diners squeamish. As American palates shifted toward leaner, more uniform meats, scrapple was pushed aside. 4. Fried apples and biscuits in many Southern households. Breakfast was not complete without fried apples cooked down with butter, sugar, and cinnamon, paired with hot biscuits straight from the oven. This combination offered sweetness and warmth before boxed cereals took over. Diners in the early 20th century often served fried apples as a breakfast side, much like hash browns are served today. Why it vanished? Labor-intensive and less standardized than frozen sides like hash browns, fried apples fell out of favor. 5. Kedgeree, though it began as a British dish. Kedgeree found its way to American breakfast menus in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, especially in hotels and upscale restaurants. It was a mix of rice, smoked fish, often haddock boiled eggs, and curry spices, a surprising but satisfying breakfast. Why it vanished? Smoked fish and curry were too exotic for most American diners by the mid-20th century. Kedgeree faded into obscurity, remembered only in old hotel menus. 6. Buckwheat pancakes. Long before buttermilk pancakes dominated diners, buckwheat pancakes were a breakfast favorite. Buckwheat flour gave them a darker color and a nutty, earthy flavor. They They were especially popular in rural America, where buckwheat grew easily. Families often served them with molasses instead of maple syrup. Why? It vanished, as refined white flour became cheaper and more widely available. Lighter, fluffier pancakes replaced the hearty buckwheat version. 7. Codfish cakes. Fish for breakfast may sound strange today, but codfish cakes were once common in New England homes and diners. Made from salt cod, mixed with potatoes, and fried into patties, they were cheap, filling, and protein-packed. Served with eggs or toast, codfish cakes were a breakfast standard well into the early 20th century. Why it vanished? Changing tastes and the decline of salted fish as a pantry staple pushed codfish cakes off the table. 8. Johnny cakes. Johnny cakes, a type of flat cornmeal cake, were a colonial-era staple that persisted into the 20th century, especially in Rhode Island and New England. They were simple cornmeal, water and salt, fried into griddled cake sand, often eaten with butter, syrup, or honey. Why it vanished? They were gradually replaced by pancakes and waffles, which were sweeter, fluffier, and easier to market nationally. Baked oatmeal casseroles. Before instant oatmeal packets ruled supermarket shelves, baked oatmeal casseroles were a popular family breakfast. A mixture of rolled oats, milk, eggs, and sugar was baked in the oven until golden brown, often topped with fruit or spices. This dish filled kitchens with the warm smell of cinnamon and nutmeg, and it could be sliced into squares like cake. Families loved it because it was affordable, hearty, and could feed a crowd. Why it vanished? Busy families shifted to quicker stovetop or instant oatmeal. Baking breakfast in the oven every morning simply did not fit the new pace of life. 10. Popovers. Popovers were airy, hollow rolls made from an egg batter, baked until they puffed dramatically. Crispy on the outside, soft and custardy on the inside, they were often served with butter or jam. In the early 20th century, hotels and diners proudly served popovers alongside bacon and eggs. Their golden towering shape made them impressive, almost theatrical. Why it vanished? Popovers are tricky to make consistently, and fast food and diner kitchens gravitated towards simpler biscuits and toast. Today, they are mostly found in cookbooks rather than menus. 11. Fried bologna and eggs. During the mid-20th century, especially in the South and Midwest, fried bologna was a breakfast star. Thick slices of bologna were pan-fried until the edges curled, then paired with fried eggs and toast. The flavor was salty, smoky, and satisfying like a poor man's ham and eggs. Why it vanished? Bologna itself fell out of favor as Americans shifted to leaner, less processed meats. What was once a working-class comfort became a forgotten food. Liver and onions for breakfast. It may sound unusual today, but liver and onions were once common breakfast fare, especially in diners of the 1940s and 1950s. High in iron and considered. Strength-giving liver was often served with toast or potatoes in the morning, particularly to laborers and factory workers. Why it vanished? Tastes changed. By the 1970s, liver was considered old-fashioned, and its strong flavor made it less appealing to younger diners. 13. Breakfast stew hash with gravy. Breakfast once meant using whatever leftovers were in the kitchen. Stew-like hashes, made from meat, potatoes, and onions, were topped with gravy and served with eggs. This hearty dish reflected a waste-not philosophy, stretching last night's dinner into a new morning meal. Why it vanished? Diners simplified their menus, and neatly portioned items like bacon, sausage, and toast became more standard than messy leftover stews. 14. Grits with red-eye gravy in the South. Grits with red-eye gravy was once a breakfast standard. Red-eye gravy was made by deglazing a pan of country ham with black coffee, creating a salty, bitter sauce. Served over grits, it was a wake-up call in both flavor and caffeine. Why it vanished? As Southern cooking modernized, red-eye gravy was replaced by creamier gravies and more universally appealing flavors. Few diners outside the South ever offered it. 15. Breakfast porridges, wheatena, farina, maltomeal before cereals dominated. Hot wheat porridges were the go-to American breakfast. Wheatena, farina, and maltomeal were marketed as wholesome, nourishing, and ideal for children. These porridges filled bowls in the 1930s through the 1960s, flavored with butter, sugar, or molasses. Why it vanished? Instant oatmeal and sugary cold cereals outshined them in both convenience and taste. While still sold in small amounts, They are far from their golden days. 16. Ham steak and eggs, a thick slice of ham steak, fried until caramelized on the edges. Served with eggs and toast, was once a diner favorite. This hearty plate symbolized classic Americanatha, kind of breakfast seen in roadside diners off Route 66. Why it vanished. Rising meat costs and health concerns about fatty breakfasts pushed ham steak off most menus, replaced by cheaper bacon and sausage sides. 17. Apple pancakes, baked skillet style, in many Midwestern diners. Single large pancake studded with caramelized apples was served straight from the skillet, sliced like pie, sweet tart and buttery. It was a showpiece breakfast, often dusted with powdered sugar. Why it vanished. The dish required longer cooking times and cast-iron skillets, which clashed with the fast-paced diner environment of the late 20th century. 18. Hash brown casseroles. Before hash browns became neat little patties, they were baked into casseroles with cheese, cream, and onions. This dish often appeared on Sunday breakfast tables and in church cookbooks. It was filling, communal, and rich in flavor. Why it vanished. Individual hash brown patties and shredded hash browns became the industry standard, quicker, easier, and less indulgent. 19. Cottage fried potatoes. Before hash browns became standardized, many diners offered cottage fried potatoes. Thick slices of potatoes were pan-fried in butter or lard until golden and crisp, then sprinkled with salt and sometimes parsley. They were hearty, rustic, and paired beautifully with eggs. Families at home often made them on cast-iron skillets, using leftover potatoes from dinner. Why it vanished. As frozen hash browns became the default, cottage fried potatoes faded away. Their irregular texture and longer cooking time made them less appealing for fast-paced kitchens. 20. Flannel cakes. Flannel cakes were the predecessor of modern pancakes. Thinner and softer than today's fluffy stacks, they resembled crepes, but were slightly heartier. They were popular in the late 1800s and early 1900s, served with molasses, honey, or butter. Why it vanished. Pancakes evolved to become fluffier, sweeter, and more uniform. Flannel cakes, with their plain appearance, quietly disappeared. 21. Oxtail soup for breakfast. Yes, soup for breakfast was once normal, especially in immigrant communities. Oxtail soup, simmered slowly overnight, was ready to eat in the morning with bread or rolls, was rich in flavor, nourishing, and practical for people who needed energy for long work days. Why it vanished? Soup fell out of favor as a breakfast dish when lighter, quicker foods became standard. The idea of soup in the morning seems odd to modern palates, even if it once was common. 22. Griddle cakes with sorghum syrup. In the American South and Midwest, sorghum syrup was a go-to sweetener before maple syrup became widely available. Griddle cakes topped with sorghum were a farm breakfast classic. The flavor was earthy, rich, and slightly tangy, unlike the sweetness of maple syrup. Why it vanished. Maple syrup, corn syrup, and pancake syrups dominated the market, while sorghum syrup production declined. Today, it is mostly a regional specialty. 23. Boiled eggs with soldiers. Borrowed from British traditions, soldiers referred to strips of buttered toast dipped into soft-boiled eggs. In the early 20th century, this was a common children's breakfast in America, especially among middle-class families influenced by European customs. Why it vanished. Fast breakfasts replaced it, and the ritual of soft-boiled eggs with toast soldiers felt fussy compared to cereal or scrambled eggs. 24. Pork chop breakfasts. It may sound like dinner today, but pork chops with eggs, toast, and potatoes were once a diner standard. Roadside restaurants in the 1940s and 1950s proudly offered pork chops as a hearty breakfast option. The sizzling meat, paired with black coffee, embodied the rugged image of man's breakfast. Why it vanished. Rising meat prices and health trends moved pork chops to dinner menus instead. Few restaurants still offer it as a morning dish. 25. Cream of rice cereal. While cream of wheat endures, cream of rice was once just as common. It was marketed as gentle on the stomach, ideal for children and the sick. Served with butter, sugar, or cinnamon, it was a warm and comforting breakfast. Why it vanished. It lost the breakfast cereal wars. Cream of wheat and instant oatmeals outpaced it in sales, and cream of rice slowly disappeared from diner menus. 26. Chicken and waffles old style today. Chicken and waffles have returned in trendy restaurants. But the original version, popular in African American communities and some urban diners in the early 20th century, was a breakfast food. Crispy fried chicken, paired with fluffy waffles and syrup, was indulgent, filling, and celebratory. Why it vanished? By mid-century, it became a niche regional dish before vanishing from mainstream breakfast menus. Its modern revival is more brunch than breakfast. 27. Breakfast pies in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Leftover pie was often eaten for breakfast: apple pie, mincemeat pie, even custard pie. Some diners even served breakfast pie specials. Why it vanished? Changing ideas of health and nutrition discouraged pie in the morning. Over time, pie became firmly categorized as dessert, not breakfast. 28. Hominy, grits with butter and cream. Before instant grits became a convenience product, Harmony grits were cooked slowly on stovetops for breakfast. They had a coarser texture than today's quick grits and were often enriched with butter and cream. Farm families across the South depended on grits as a cheap filling breakfast that could be dressed up with cheese or bacon fat. Why it vanished? Slow-cooked grits required time that modern kitchens no longer had. Instant versions replaced the traditional dish, and diners stopped serving hominy-style breakfasts. 29. Breakfast fish herring, kippers, and smoked salmon in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Fish was not unusual for breakfast. Hotels often offered herring, kippers, or smoked salmon with eggs and toast. Immigrant communities helped keep the tradition alive for a time. The smoky, briny flavors paired well with strong coffee, but over time Americans leaned toward bacon and sausage as their breakfast proteins of choice. Why it vanished? Fish was expensive, required special preparation, and never matched the universal appeal of pork products. By the 1950s, it was rare to see fish on breakfast menus. 30. Corn Dodgers. Corn Dodgers were small, fried or baked cornmeal cakes, similar to hush puppies but flatter. Popular in the 19th century, they were eaten at breakfast with butter or syrup. They carried a frontier charm associated with pioneers and rustic farmhouse kitchens. It vanished. As refined flour replaced cornmeal in many American households, Dodgers faded into obscurity, overshadowed by biscuits and pancakes. 31. Shredded wheat biscuits, hot breakfast style. Today, shredded wheat exists in cold cereal boxes, but originally it was marketed as a hot breakfast. Large pillow-shaped biscuits were soaked in warm milk and sometimes topped with fruit. In the 1920s and 1930s, advertisements touted it as a modern, healthful way to start the day. Why it vanished? Consumers preferred sweeter cereals. The blandness of hot shredded wheat biscuits made them less appealing, and they slowly disappeared from breakfast tables. 32. Country fried steak with eggs. This Southern-inspired dish once appeared regularly on diner menus. A breaded beef steak, fried and smothered in cream gravy, was paired with eggs, potatoes, and toast. It was filling, indulgent, and practically a feast for breakfast. Why it vanished? Health trends in the 1980s and 1990s discouraged heavy fried breakfasts. Today, you might still find it in small-town diners, but it has nearly vanished from chain menus. 33. Indian pudding for breakfast, a uniquely New England dish. Indian pudding was made from cornmeal, molasses, milk, and spices, slow-cooked into a porridge-like custard. In the 1800s, it was a common breakfast dish. Its flavor was deep, earthy, and slightly sweet, very different from modern cereals. Why it vanished? It was too tormentive for busy mornings, and its rustic simplicity did not compete with flashier breakfast foods. Today, it survives only in historic recipes. Closing reflection, looking back at these 33 vanished breakfasts, we see more than just food. We see the changing story of America itself, from the hearty, resourceful meals of farm families to the glamorous hotel spreads of the early 20th century, to the fast-paced convenience breakfasts of the modern era. Each dish tells us something about the people who ate it, the times they lived in, and the values they held, whether it was thrift, indulgence, or simply the joy of a warm, comforting meal before the day began. Many of these breakfasts disappeared not because they were bad, but because time changed. Diners and restaurants simplified menus, families wanted quicker options, and tastes shifted toward sweet cereals, portable sandwiches, and coffee to go. Still, remembering them is like opening a time capsule. They remind us of cozy kitchens, clattering diners, and the golden era of sit-down breakfasts that lasted longer than 5 minutes. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these vanished breakfasts would you bring back? Do you love to sit down to creamed chipped beef on toast, a plate of pork chops and eggs, or maybe a slice of apple pancakes straight from the skillet? I'll share your thoughts and memories in the comments below. I absolutely love hearing your food stories. And if you enjoyed this nostalgic journey, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another trip through America's food history. Breakfast may change, but the memories last forever.